Jai Gurudev, and welcome to this journey with Gaura Nitai. So I'm here to do a Q&A with you. There have been some questions that have been submitted surrounding the deities of Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda. And so I will answer 3 of those questions, and perhaps I'll do a short introduction as well to Lords Chaitanya and Nityananda in case you might be a little unfamiliar with their backgrounds. So first of all, Lord Chaitanya was born in the late 15th century, and he was born in a town called Navadvip in the northeast of India. And his dear disciple, often referred to almost as a brother to him, Lord Nityananda, was born in Ekachakra in the same region of India. And together, headed by Lord Chaitanya, they founded the Gaudiya Vaishnava movement, which is the movement of Vaishnavas in the Gaura region of India. As I said, this spans the north and eastern section of India into Bangladesh, what is nowadays Bangladesh. And there are certain amazing characteristics of this movement that are nowadays part of the commonly known Vaishnava landscape, but at that time were quite innovative, or at least very much brought to the forefront by the personality of Lord Chaitanya and his associates. And that is the Sankirtana movement, chanting of the Lord's names, especially in a congregational manner, bringing people together through the streets, chanting the names of the Lord, spreading the mercy of the Lord through his name to all the devotees. Lord Chaitanya is also the founder of Achintya Bheda Abheda philosophy, a form of Vedanta that essentially states that the Lord is simultaneously the same and different from his parts, the parts being the material energy, the jivas, the souls like you and I. And it is, of course, far more complex than anything I hope to answer in today's short segment that I have with you. And I think that'll do as a short introduction. I can maybe mention that the reason they're called Gaura Nitai, even though I say that it's Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, so Gaura or Gauranga speaks to his complexion. It's said that he had a golden-like complexion, and this is where the name comes from, Gaura. And Nitai is just short for Nityananda. And actually, it's also worth mentioning that it is widely believed, it's a widely held belief by the followers of Chaitanya and Nityananda, that Lord Chaitanya was the incarnation of Lord Krishna himself, of Radharani herself into one, and he came to not be the Lord in a worshipable form, but rather to worship the Lord and showcase the worship of the Lord. So he is the Lord incarnate as a devotee and guru, not as God, so to speak. And Lord Nityananda, he is an incarnation of Balaram, of Adishesha, or Lakshmana, whichever incarnation you wish to refer him to. And so he plays the role of the intercessor, of the companion, which tends to be in the philosophy of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas the role of the guru. And I'll speak a little bit more because I've seen some of the questions. They kind of allude to this, so I'll explore it a bit more when we go into the questions themselves. Okay? So question number 1, how do Gaura Nitai relate to our sampradaya? How should we view them? So when we say our sampradaya, we are referring to the Hari Bhakta sampradaya that Guruji has very recently announced, that it is in the process of being formalized. And I think this is a wonderful question to sort of get us started on the role that they can play in our spiritual vision. And that is because what Guruji is addressing with the Hari Bhakta Sampradaya, what he has aimed to address with it as a whole is that he wants to emphasize the parts of Vaishnavism that should be emphasized. He wants to give less emphasis to the parts of Vaishnavism that need less emphasis. He wants to unite that which should be united and not separate unnecessarily on the grounds of disputes between common persons and ideas of the mind, so to speak. And as a result of that, we were always affiliated very, very closely to the Sri Sampradaya. We were an offshoot of the Sri Sampradaya. Gurudev himself was initiated into the Sri Sampradaya. And historically speaking, we can look at the Sri Sampradaya as a perfect contrast and comparison, because the Sri Sampradaya preceded the advent of Lord Chaitanya, and they never really took on the worship of Chaitanya or the consideration of Chaitanya as an incarnation of Narayana. And so we have on the one hand this stance of the Sri Sampradaya, traditional stance, that Chaitanya was at most a saintly person, Then you have the Gaudiya Vaishnava stance, the Chaitanya is the Lord himself, in fact even Krishna and Radha in one. And then Guruji is essentially there saying, you see, the emphasis, the points emphasized in the Sri Sampradaya of Sharanagati, of the supremacy of Sriman Narayana, these are not in contradiction to any claim to divinity by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or by the devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in reference to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he, by his own spiritual knowledge, by his own God consciousness, confirms the divinity of Chaitanya and Nityananda. So in our Sampradaya, in our conception of Vaishnavism, they are also the direct incarnations of the Lord in our belief. So very much like the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we believe that Chaitanya and Nityananda are in fact Sriman Narayana, Adishesha, but we don't believe that on the basis of scriptural testimony. We are not making this claim on the basis that we have studied Shastra and come to the conclusion that this is an undeniable fact. No. We are coming to this conclusion on the basis of the direct testimony of Paramahamsa Vishwananda, the founder of our Sampradaya. By his own divine vision, by his own God consciousness, he has declared it and we follow. And so this is a nice way of putting it, because this way we understand that even though we may have a foundation in a tradition that does not acknowledge that divinity on the basis that it came after its founding visionary, in this case Sri Ramanujacharya, and therefore Ramanujacharya could not pass comment on the divinity or not of Mahaprabhu, Gurudev has come after the advent of Mahaprabhu, and he can give his opinion and has fully accepted his divinity, of course. So first, just to paint that picture. Secondly, I would say, what position do they hold in our Sampradaic view? So I've made it clear that we do unite the visions. We do bring him in, we acknowledge, etc. But the question is now about the position. The presence within the Sampradaya is clear. He's in. But the position he holds is, it's a topic far, far deeper to explore than the time I have now. But if I can summarize it like this. For us in the Haribhakta Sampradaya, Guruji and Chaitanya are non-different. Guruji is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Guruji. And from that perspective, what position should he hold beyond that of an inspiration, that of a reference, and that of a reverence that we offer to him? For example, he is in the temple. Our deities are here. That is why we are celebrating the journey of Gaura Nitai, because we give reverence and we do take inspiration from his Leela and teachings. But the reference point today, in 2021, in our lives being lived right now in our paths, is the present day incarnation of Lord Narayana to us, the present day manifestation of divinity that is walking, living, speaking to us, and that is Paramahamsa Vishwananda. And so the very thing that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did for his followers, that he was God incarnated as a devotee slash guru, Gurudev is doing for us right now. The exact same thing. He is to us God incarnate as devotee slash guru. And so on that basis, I actually see an immense number of parallels between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Guruji. A topic I'd for sure love to explore in another chance, perhaps even in the next questions. But there's a lot of similarity between not only the persons, but also the activities and pastimes that they have chosen to enact, at least so far in the case of Guruji, of course. Mahaprabhu left his body at the age of 48. He led a, let's say, I would say a short life, but then when we have people like Shankaracharya with 32 years, you have to kind of put it in the middle somewhere. But nonetheless, a very full life, of course, with lots of achievement and great success. But maybe I'll move on to the next question then, and we can start to deepen this understanding a bit more. But to clarify, Gaura Nitai are present in our Sampradaya. Their position, however, is diminished not by the fact of them being anything but the full divinity of Narayana and Adishesha, but by the, let's quote unquote, unnecessary, the lack of a need, let's say, to elevate the position due to the manifest presence of Guruji. So the second question, could you talk about Guruji's relationship to Gaura Nitai, his experiences of them? Two things come to mind. First of all, I visited Navadvip with Gurudev, and it was a private pilgrimage. There was only 6 of us, and we visited Navadvip and Mayapur, where also more of his pastimes took place. And it was wonderful, and Guruji was very immersed in the feeling of the place, in the mode of worship, and it's not much more that I can say in terms of experience, in the sense that it was not something that was maybe externally shown at the time, but Guruji enjoyed it very much. He often speaks about how nice it was and how much of an impression it made on him. But I think the other thing that comes to my mind, which is a more prominent experience, is, in the early days of my life with Guruji and observing him and being involved in Bhakti Marga and his movement, Guruji would talk a lot actually about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and often sing a lot in the same spirit, Harinam and singing Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and very much going into this mood of Mahaprabhu. And there were many kirtans at the time where Guruji would be dancing up, really with all the devotees, and he would sometimes go into these divine bhavs, in these ecstatic moods, much like we hear in the accounts of Chaitanya's life. So we have authoritative accounts like Chaitanya Charitamrita, written by Krishnadasa Kaviraj. We have Chaitanya Bhagavata before then. We have Chaitanya Charanamrita from Murari Gupta and Swarupa Damodar and others. There's many testimonies you can read, many books. But the principle of it is there you hear about how Chaitanya used to sing his kirtan, and he used to go into such ecstasy, and he would sometimes faint. He would, in a sense, transcend his body. And so his body would be incapable of holding the extent of, this is a poor expression, that it's unable to hold, but it would appear to be the case. Yeah, it would appear to be the case. And I've experienced the same things with Guruji. And so I've witnessed Guruji doing the same multiple times, where he was in this ecstatic bhav to the point that he would also faint. And he would be there taken care of by the devotees, tending to him, and he would be out of this world, essentially, eyes closed. And the devotees would be singing and dancing around him, and it was this unbelievable, deep, deep feeling of ecstatic bliss and devotion. And Guruji stopped it at one point. He completely stopped all of this, and I did inquire with him as to why. I said, Guruji, those were some of the best times, and it was an incredible, how regular it was that you would go into this mood and you would go display, your nature in that way. And he said, yes, but there's a time for everything, and I will always behave according to the needs of the moment and the place. And he explained to me also that in addition to that, which is of course a more than valid explanation, he said also that it's too much sometimes, because when you behave like this, when you bring this level of intensity, of spiritual ecstasy, everybody gets wrapped up in it. Everybody gets caught up in it. And as the crowds get bigger and as more and more people come with very different levels of understanding, levels of spiritual engagement and involvement, some people don't understand, right? Or some people are not ready to see such a thing or to engage with such a thing in the right way, and maybe they make misconceptions in their mind or make offenses or whatever you want to term it as. And that, of course, played a role as well, because the Guru is always, first and foremost, compassionate and the well-wisher of his disciples, his devotees. He only does and acts in the way that is best for you, not in the way that is most desired by you. And this is an important distinction to make. And so even though I was desiring this kind of reenactment of these episodes, that doesn't mean that that's what's best for me or the wider Sangha and the wider movement as a whole. So just, it's nice to recount those moments that will, of course, live forever in the history of Gurudev's life, and those who were there saw it, but it was very reminiscent of the Leelas of Chaitanya and Nityananda roaming the streets of Bengal in their Sankirtana movement, which, of course, I think has touched a lot of people for its intense love and simplicity. So then the third question, I said I would stick to three, so I'll keep it here. Maybe I can add a bit more to the first question afterwards. Why are Gaura Nitai always worshipped together or seen together? You don't necessarily see other avatars like that. I would agree to an extent. I think with the exception perhaps of, of course, Rama with Lakshmana and Krishna, at least in his early life, often depicted with Balarama also. But by and large, I think that's a good question, because they both stand for very important principles that, when understood, have to be understood together. So as I mentioned earlier, in Gaudiya theology, in Gaudiya Vaishnava theology, because I have to refer to Gaudiya Vaishnava theology because that is the theology institutionalized by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Of course, I'll refer to them and then I can add any perspectives that may differ from our point of view. In their theological vision, Mahaprabhu is God himself, right? And Nityananda is seen as the first creation, the first expansion of God. That is Adishesha, that is Balarama, that is Lakshmana, that is also for us Ramanuja. Ramanuja is also the incarnation of the same line, of the same person, Adishesha, and therefore no different to Nityananda if we are to confirm that line of incarnation. And so therefore they fulfill the role of the most intimate associate. And the most intimate associate is seen as the Guru. So the principle and role of the Guru is manifest in Nityananda Prabhu. And similarly, the object of worship is manifest in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So these two must go together. Because the Guru always goes with God, the Guru always brings God, the Guru only has relevance, only has importance in relation to God, and God can only be accessed through Guru. And so these two are inseparable in that sense. Because the Guru principle is the key that opens the doors to God, and God cannot be seen in any way but through the Guru principle. And so they are dependent on one another in a sense, yeah, because in the higher vision, they are actually non-different. It is only Narayana, Vasudeva, Sarvam, so says the Gita. But in terms of the roles that each incarnation enacts, this is the way to look at it. And I think there's a beautiful story that exemplifies this. So in the Chaitanya Leela, we have the story of Jagai and Madai. So Jagai and Madai are two criminals, drunkards, and they encounter Chaitanya Nityananda one fine day, and actually Nityananda. And Nityananda is treating them with great affection. You know, he is preaching as he does, doing his Sankirtan, his bhajana, his service. And they are slandering him, you know, they are behaving as they are, you know, uncontrolled is the best way to look at it. And they throw an earthen pot at Nityananda and it hits him on the head and he starts to bleed. And then Nityananda famously speaks to them. He says, "Should I stop loving you now because you threw an earthen pot at my head? Is that a reason to stop loving?" So this is how merciful he was. He didn't get angry. He didn't condemn them. He didn't attack them. He didn't do anything of the sort. But when Chaitanya found out that his dear, dear, dear associate, you know, his closest associate in a sense, had been attacked and was bleeding, he came in a fit of rage and he wanted to kill Jagai and Madai. And so he had even manifested his divine chakra, the Sudarshana chakra. He had sort of pulled the veil of Maya off of himself because he is acting the role of a devotee, hidden from the eyes of the people. And so the Sudarshana chakra is coming. He wants to kill them, but Nityananda, he intercedes and he says, you know, have mercy on them, be compassionate to them, etc., etc. And of course, he grants Nityananda that request. He says to him that he will do it, of course, because he is so dear to him, so he will not reject such a request from somebody so dear. This is the way we understand. God cannot refuse that which the Guru has said. When God gets angry, the Guru can forgive. We hear this in the Guru Gita. Guruji explains this very well. In the Guru Gita, we hear the expression that if Shiva is angry, the Guru can come to your rescue, but if the Guru is angry, even Shiva can't save you. And so the notion there is the same. If Chaitanya is angry with you, he is God himself. Your Guru, Nityananda, can intervene on your behalf and everything is fine. But if Nityananda had been the one that is angry, well then, that's it. Who else is going to intervene? But as we see, Nityananda was not angry. In fact, he was supremely compassionate. And these are the stories that I think best describe the dual role of Guru and God. Because they are both God. It's God receiving service and God giving service. So the Guru is the serving God. He serves. He serves the people. He's going around doing nothing but helping people to love God, helping people to approximate themselves to God. Whereas God in the sense of Krishna or Rama or Nrsingadev is there as the object of their surrender, the object of their worship, giving salvation, giving benedictions. He is the object of their attention and consciousness and etc., etc. And I think he has to receive the service. And the way he gives service is in the role of the Guru primarily. Of course, God serves in other ways too, but he gives service primarily through the role of the Guru. And so this is a nice Leela, I think, that exemplifies this nicely. over and above that, I think there's a nice contrast in their lives also, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he became a sannyas. In fact, he took initiation from Ishwarapuri, who was a disciple in the Madhvacharya Sampradaya, and yet he didn't follow the teachings of Madhvacharya, nor the philosophies and Siddhanta, the conclusions of the Madhva Sampradaya, which is another parallel to Guruji. Guruji taking initiation into the Sri Sampradaya, but not necessarily adhering to Sri Vaishnava principles across the board. But later on, he took sannyas from Keshav Bharati, who was an Advaitin actually. Guruji took sannyas from Avtar Babaji, who many people consider to be an Advaitin. And in that, he took the life of a sannyas and lived it to, in an exemplary fashion. Nityananda, on the other hand, was married. He had 2 wives, he had children, a son, daughter, and he lived therefore a very different lifestyle. He didn't live the lifestyle of a sannyas. And so you see also, given that the purpose of their incarnation was to exemplify devotion to the Lord, then to have both styles of life having been displayed, I think is also a wonderful way to look at it, why they're together, because both of these paths are available in the Vaishnava path. Both of them are practiced in a day-to-day basis, and so I think it's important to have references on both sides, not just one or the other. Of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was also married before he took sannyas, but nonetheless, sannyas was how he ended his life. I think I'm almost debating with myself how much to go into the topic of the comparison and similarities, and how to extract somehow some more meaning for us as devotees in that comparison, because I think there's three occasions in which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sort of put down the veil. There are actually more, but I'm referring to 3 specifically now, where he pulled down the veil of who he was. And why I think that's important, why I would like to leave you guys with this notion, is that nowadays in the Gaudiya Vaishnava movement, in a lot of Vaishnava communities, it's not even a conversation. Was Chaitanya really God? It's just, no, this is common knowledge, everybody knows this, he's Krishna incarnation, okay. At the time, this was not necessarily the case at all. He was recognized by those close to him, sure. Many believed it on the basis of faith without having had any particular proof of this, sure. Same thing that can be said for Guruji now, right? Many who don't believe, many who do believe, many who have seen certain things. When Chaitanya met Lord Nityananda in that incarnation for the first time, the very next day, Chaitanya revealed a form to him. He actually gave Lord Nityananda a divine vision of himself with 6 arms. It was Shadbhuja. Shadbhuja means 6 arms. You have Chaturbhuja Vishnu, you have Shadbhuja Chaitanya. So he had 6 arms. And the 6 arms were the following. It was 2 of his own, and then he had 2 of Krishna and 2 of Rama. Now, he gave this vision on 3 occasions to 3 separate people, 3 separate devotees. And each time was a little bit different. The last 2 were the same. To Nityananda, he wasn't holding the paraphernalia of those deities. He was holding more traditional items that are usually associated to Lord Narayana, Lord Mahavishnu, so Shankha Chakra, Gada, Padma, etc. But he then later gave this vision to 2 persons in Puri. First was Sarvabhatta Bhattacharya, who was an Advaitin at the time, and he gave him the vision holding the bow and arrow, so Rama's hands. He had a cowherder's stick and a flute, which was Krishna's arms, and then his 2 arms were holding a danda and a kamandalu, because he was a sannyas, right? And in this, he was essentially showing that, and something that I think is also the right way of looking at this, people talk about Chaitanya, he's an incarnation of Krishna, he's an incarnation of Radha. Yeah, but if that is the case, then he's automatically also an incarnation of Rama, and also an incarnation of Nrsingadev, and also Narayana, etc., etc. And I think we sometimes get too caught up in the separation of the identities rather than the unity of the identities. In Hari Bhakta Sampradaya, one of the major things it does is it aims to unite that which should be united. Not do away with distinctions, but unite as the fundamental foundation which we do. So we don't have this notion that in the Hari Bhakta Sampradaya, the main conception is Lakshmi Narayana at the cost of Radha Krishna or at the cost of Sita Rama, etc., etc. And I just found that this instance, he later showed it to the king of Puri also, where Chaitanya embodies 3 separate incarnations in one, as a special darshan to special devotees is a perfect sort of way of drawing that comparison and showing maybe that Chaitanya also, his message was also very much the message of the Haribhakta Sampradaya, that the Lord is one. He does take different forms, but ultimately he is one, and he is worthy of our worship and love. So that will be it for today. Jai Gurudev.
So Jai Gurudev, now this is the final session of the kirtan, and as said, the kirtan can be considered, let's say, the essence or the heritage of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, like to forget ourselves in singing the divine name. It's not only sitting there and telling ourselves now we are singing, but actually to really try to forget ourselves in the mantra. So we're going to chant a very famous mantra which Guruji also introduced in the past to Bhakti Marga, Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam, Japa Hare Krishna Hare Ram. It was written by Chaitanya's Babaji around 100 years ago. He was an ardent follower of Chaitanya, and it was said that this mantra was so powerful, which actually means you engage in the chanting of the name as a seva, as a service to the environment. It was so powerful that it cured diseases, it even made stones melting and the trees dance. So this is what we can sing tonight.
So the melody is actually from the Gaura Arti, and I vividly remember when Guruji first sang the melody with us in 2007 or 2008 in the old ashram in Steffenshof. Many of you are familiar with the melody, so join us wherever you are. Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Japa Hare Krishna Hare Ram Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Japa Hare Krishna Hare Ram Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Japa Hare Krishna Hare Ram Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Japa Hare Krishna Hare Rama Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Japa Hare Krishna Hare Ram Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Japa Hare Krishna Hare Ram Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Japa Hare Krishna Hare Ram Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Japa Hare Krishna Hare Ram O Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Japa Hare Krishna Hare Ram Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Japa Hare Krishna Hare Ram Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Japa Hare Krishna Hare Ram Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Japa Hare Krishna Hare Ram Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Japa Hare Krishna Hare Ram Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Japa Hare Krishna Hare Ram Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Japa Hare Krishna Hare Ram Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Japa Hare Krishna Hare Ram Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Japa Hare Krishna Hare Ram O Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Japa Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ramo Hare Ramo Ramo Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Oh Hare Ramo 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Japa Hare Krishna Hare Ram Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Japa Hare Krishna Hare Ram Bhajo Nitai Gorengo Radhe Shyam Japa Hare Krishna Hare Nitai, Nitai, Nitai Gorengo, Nitai Gorengo, Nitai Gorengo. Oh, Nitai, Nitai, Nitai Gorengo, Nitai Gorengo, Nitai Gorengo. Nitai, Nitai, Nitai Gorengo, Nitai Gorengo, Nitai Gorengo. Nitai, Nitai, Nitai Gorengo, Nitai Gorengo, Nitai Gorengo. Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Jayo Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Jayo Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Jayo Nitai Gorenga bole, oh Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Jayo Nitai Gorenga bole. Nitai Gorengo, Nitai Gorengo, Jayo Nitai Gorengo, Nitai, Nitai, Nitai Gorengo, Nitai Gorengo, Jayo Nitai Gorengo, Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Jayo Nitai Gorenga bole, oh Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Jayo Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Jayo Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Jayo Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gora, Nitai Gora, oh Nitai Goranga, Nitai Gora, Nitai Gora, Nitai Gora, oh Nitai Gora, Nitai Gora. Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Oh Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Nitai Gorengo, Nitai Gorengo, Jayo Nitai Gorengo. Oh Nitai, Nitai, Nitai Gorengo, Nitai Gorengo, Jayo Nitai Gorengo. Nitai, Nitai, Nitai Gorengo, Nitai Gorengo, Jayo Nitai Gorengo. Oh Nitai, Nitai, Nitai Gorengo, Nitai Gorengo, Jayo Nitai Gorengo. Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Jayo Nitai Gorenga bole. Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Jayo Nitai Gorenga bole. Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Jayo Nitai Gorenga bole. Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Nitai Gorenga bole, Jayo Nitai Gorenga bole. Bhajo Nitai Gorenga Radhe Shyam, Japa Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. Bhajo Nitai Gorenga Radhe Shyam, Bhajo Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. Bhajo Nitai Gorenga Radhe Shyam, Japa Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. Oh, Bhajo Nitai Gorenga Radhe Shyam, Japa Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Oh Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Oh Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Nitai, Nitai, Nitai Gorengo, Nitai Gorengo, Jayo Nitai Gorengo. Nitai Go Premalade, Nitai Go Premalade, Nitai Go Premalade, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Shyam Ram Govinda, Satgurudeva Shri Swami Vishwananda Mahaprabhu ki Jai.
Jai Gurudev, everyone. It was a pleasure to having you all on board, celebrating Gaura Nitai with you. I hope you really enjoyed. If you feel you have received something of this event, please feel free to donate via the link which you find on the event page, which you originally used to register for this. We keep on producing and supporting you and connecting with you through this online ways. We really enjoyed this event with you. Much love to all of you. Jai Gurudev.